so I will call to order this meeting of the Somerset Berkley Regional School Committee at 6:39. Notice having been posted. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions may be made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. And I'll do a roll call of members present. Mr. Fenstermaker.
Here.
Ms. Ferreira.
Here.
Mr. Machado.
Here.
And the chair is here. So absent, we have Ms. Ramos Gagliardi, Ms. O'Brien, and Ms. Solomon. And also absent is our student rep, Ms. Abby O'Brien. Also with us this evening are our superintendent of schools, Mr. Jeffrey Schoonover, our director of business and finance, Ms. Sharon Altaro, our principal, Dr. Susan Browsford, and our recording secretary, Ms. Robin McCall. May I ask everyone to stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next regularly scheduled meeting of this committee is Tuesday, February 28th at 6:30 here in the Somerset Berkley Regional High School Library. The first item on the agenda this evening under new business is the approval of the amended Reads Collaborative Agreement. I believe everyone has a copy of that agreement in tonight's folder. Does anyone have any questions about the amended agreement? In that case, I'll entertain a motion that the Somerset Berkley Regional School Committee approve the amended Reads Collaborative Agreement as approved by the Reads Collaborative Board of Directors on January 19th, 2023.
So moved.
Motion moved by Mr. Machado and seconded by Ms. Ferreira. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will abstain.
So 3 in favor and Mr. Fenstermaker abstains. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the ski trip to Smuggler's Notch from March 17th through March 19th, 2023. Again, if there's information about this in your folder, and it is essentially identical to the previous very successful and very popular ski trip. I would also note that the ratio of chaperones to students is once again 11 to 1 students to chaperones. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the ski club trip to Smuggler's Notch on March 17th to 19th, 2023.
So moved.
A motion made by Mr. Machado, seconded by Mr. Fenstermaker. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Approved. The next item on the agenda is the presentation of the 2023-24 preliminary budget.
Yeah, I'm just going to stand up here and then hopefully my voice will project. We're trying out a new toy as well, so. Bob, I said I look at Vienna. Vienna, is it Vienna one?
Yes.
I'll stand here and then go through these as we're speaking. One of the things I do want to point out, I know on the agenda we were going to discuss possibly, or no, not, I apologize, I thought we were going to discuss the assessment sheet. We're still waiting for information from the Department of Ed relative to the minimum local contribution requirements by the member communities. State aid hasn't been released yet. We want to verify student enrollment data to make sure we're doing the correct calculations to as a percentage of member communities. So when you see the first slide, it really speaks to what the projected revenue is. Well, we use a level Chapter 70 dollar amount. I want you to be shocked. Historically, I think over the past 7 years, 6-7 years,
It's between 400 and 500,000 that we've received beyond, over the previous year. So just assuming that we follow a similar trend, we can think, I think it was 472,000 with the
Yeah.
exception of the 1
Yeah.
year following COVID when most districts saw a decrease because of increased enrollment. But taking that one out, it was about 470,000 on that increase that we experienced.
So I just wanted to qualify that as you go through here. And it would be very difficult to even calculate what the assessment's going to be until we know what the minimum local required contribution is by the member communities. I will expand this.
So is it fair to say then that it's sort of like the most conservative
Yes.
It is.
estimate of
Yes.
revenue, right?
Yeah, it is. The last thing we want to do is put some estimates in there, and we don't hit the target. We're going to be spending time explaining why we were off, and then it creates a lot of confusion, a lot of angst. We know this is just level allocation for this year, from last year. I did, based on what came out of the budget subcommittee, I know decisions haven't been made yet, but the revenue for student fees for athletics is still full based on what's in place right now. There'll be more work, I believe, that'll be coming out of the budget subcommittee and what those fees will look like. But this is a, so this is as we know it now. If there's a decision to reduce the fees across the board as the school committee was discussing, then any reductions in fees is an increase in the operating budget. Just take that into consideration when that takes place.
So when you say as we know it now, as of like what is in the FY '23?
Which the FY '23 carries over to FY '24. And then if there's a fee adjustment for the athletic piece, then, and it's finally approved, then an adjustment would have to be made in that category, those categories. The only one that was adjusted was the music performing arts. That was adjusted based on what was approved by the school committee will be used for FY '24. So Michelle's going to. Any questions or?
Just looking at my phone and looking at that phone, it's different. Just trying to figure out where.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. It jumped on me. It did jump on me.
I thought it.
Where did that,
You know-
where did you come from? No, you jumped to me. Okay.
It's just, see, I don't do as good a job as me. Yeah, it's the 70 and the 60,000. This right here looks very similar to the screen that I just had before. This is the revenue side. This shows that we have a balanced budget. This is one of the important pieces to make sure that our revenues expenses balanced. We want to make sure we're building a structural deficit in the operating budget. So I think because I've expanded this, it won't go over. What's that for visibility? Everybody can see that? Okay. Maybe you have it in front of you as well. Budget, total budget, including capital debt service payments, is 3.41% increase over the FY '23 approved budget. The operation side of it is 3.68%. So that's the operational piece, which is salary, benefits, all operating costs associated with running the schools. Something to note here is the TV studio revolving account is zero. So when I do the assessment sheet, that money is going right off the top from the town of Somerset will be responsible for picking up that difference. And I ran some calculations, I took it up to zero, went right back to the Somerset side, so the calculations were. Right now, we we still are on hold. We have the working rates for the medical insurance have not been set yet. I included a 4% placeholder in here for the budget. It can be anywhere from 4 to 8 to 10%. Mr. Fenstermaker is obviously the chair of that particular group. You remember it? Okay. So it's still questionable?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there's some further discussion over the next week. I think we should be setting.
Okay, so we're waiting for that, but again, if they approve a working rate greater than 4%, I have to take that into consideration for the budget. So from your perspective, if every 1% that increases for medical insurance, about $17,000. So 2% would be $34,000 and so on. Any questions in this particular slide? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, just move, no. I don't want you to trip on.
It's working out.
Speaking of insurance.
Speaking of insurance, can I just ask, can you go back to the original, the page prior? Sure. The revenue side? And I don't see the performing arts. I see the users fees. Is that all club, like athletic clubs? Did you merge those?
They are not here. They are not here. So I'm gonna just, I'll go back to this previous page. No, that's something I'll have to change up here. What we have right now, so I'm glad you asked that question. This particular budget is all-inclusive, the operating budget is all-inclusive expenses for the performing arts. Where before we had a portion of it to cover some of the expenses, and the other portion was in the revolving account, and then the money that went to the revolving account covered that expense. This budget now is very similar to the athletic budget. You know, the gross operating costs associated with athletics, gross operating budget associated with performing arts. You'll see when you get the detailed report, you'll see the offsetting credit. The only difference with here is we don't have an offsetting credit. But when you get the detail of this report, you're gonna see the total athletics, and then minus the two fees of $138,000 is a credit that coming out of student fees. You'll see the same thing for performing arts.
And are we merging, for this new coming budget, are you still keeping them separate or just using the user fees across the board?
It really depends what the school committee determines that they want to do for user fees. I think one of the conversations we had at the budget subcommittee was if, and I think at the school committee meeting as well, is if we combine and we just want to do one flat fee for students, with a flat student fee for the activities, and I had a conversation with the auditor, there's no sense of running the revolving accounts anymore. Unless they wanted to do fundraisers, then you can have the fundraisers run for the individual revolving accounts. But if you're going to have a miscellaneous revenue coming in as a flat user fee for all students, it goes into miscellaneous revenue because our expenses running those programs far exceed the revenue coming in. And it won't make sense to keep the revolving account going.
Thank you.
I'll just add, if I may, on that piece of it, you're actively looking at those fees. We'd like to second that have a recommendation on those.
Whatever it is, I'm just, to me, I just like the idea of whatever fee structure that you recommend to us, and if we either accept or decline, we will, I just would like to eliminate titles anymore. I just like the whole, these are our students, and when we come to clubs and all of that, I would like to get rid of those divisions if you come back. Because I know you had mentioned you're looking at eliminating if possible, but we don't know what the bottom looks like, and we have to decide what's best for our cost subjects as well. So.
just a snapshot of what we're including in the budget. You just saw on the previous page, a new positions. Position is assistant principal in this building to cover a variety of things that they have to handle during the course of the day, which is vastly more than I have to handle during the course of the day. Guidance counselor, a special ed for the TLC program that Mrs. Ashley had presented out to the budget subcommittee during our discussions. And then 2 paraprofessionals or registered behavior technicians, depends on what the position is, they're both within the paraprofessional category. So those are the positions that we're looking at and including within the budget. If, just as a point of reference, if these positions are higher, and if there's no changes in medical insurance, this number won't change. But if the medical insurance rates go up, then that $75,000 will also have to increase to take into consideration the working rates that are approved by the committee. Not the school committee, but the health group committee.
So before we begin, obviously, what's the rationale to add the guidance counselor, the assistant principal, obviously the TLC, I can tell, I know that, but I was just wondering, last year when we had the K-8 adding new principal, vice principal roles, you know, you had given us a high view, and I don't know if you've given it to the budget committee, but not being at those meetings, and I'm glad.
Yeah, we've certainly talked about that. Dr. Brailsford presented at one of those budget subcommittee meetings as well about the rationale for it. And really what it comes down to is our 3 administrators here are, I don't want to say they're not getting done everything that needs to get done, but not in the manner. They're just so overwhelmed with work, just as we saw at our administrators in the other levels. And they need that additional support. And by them having that additional support, our students will be better served, our teachers will be better served by it. And Dr. Brusser, I'll invite you to, if you want to speak on behalf of that, if that's okay with Ms. Andrews.
Yeah. We're busy. And a lot of, unfortunately, what we get stuck in is the managing part of the school because there's only 3 of us. So, you know, at any given time, if multiple students are involved in something, we all need to jump in and, you know, dive into whatever the managerial aspects of the job are. What's falling by the wayside because of that is the instructional leadership. I can't get into classrooms. The 2 assistant principals can't get into classrooms the way that we want to because we just don't have enough manpower to do that. So we don't get into classrooms the way we want to. We don't have those conversations with teachers the way we want to. It's just about keeping the building running every day. So we're just looking for more support in that area in terms of help for 1,000 kids and 3 people. And I mean, I've been here all year talking about the social emotional well-being of the students and the problems we have with the vaping and all that. And we're working really hard on it, and we were fortunate enough that you all supported us with the vape detectors and all that, but the vape detectors work. And every time they go off, we're trying to support our students, but there are a lot of student and parent issues. There are a lot of legal aspects to suspension hearings and 37H and 3/4 meetings, things that we have to participate in, and it's 2 of us participating every single time. There's only got to lose 1 person. God forbid somebody's absent, you know, and that's kind of where we are. And we have been pulling content coordinators who have been amazing and awesome when we need to out of their prep time and their time when they're supposed to be with their teachers down to us to help us out because we need that 4th person because it's all hands on deck. So that's the rationale in a nutshell for the assistant principal. I didn't bring my notes, and so I had a really nice presentation this last time. And you know, as far as the guidance counselor goes, we have had that recommendation on the board for a few years now. Again, social emotional issues with students. We have been putting a lot more on the guidance counselors' plates and setting the expectation a little higher. They have written curriculum now that they're following. They're pushing into Blue Raider blocks every Friday as we speak, dealing with their freshmen, meeting every single student. Those of you that have students that are underclassed in the building know they met with every single student to schedule them over the course of the 2 weeks before February vacation, and that was quite an undertaking. And unfortunately, because there were only 3 of them, we had to almost literally shut down guidance for those 2 weeks so that it could get done. With a 4th person, you know, the workload gets a little bit lighter, things happen a little quicker, and we can get more done. So we're looking to enhance our services and guidance, lower that case load for the guidance counselors, and that's the rationale for that position.
So with all that said, I knew this answer. I actually am asking this is because the public is being recorded, and if anyone asks, you know, there are days that Mr. Schoonover will tell us that, you know, the principal spent 7 hours dealing with a certain case and things like that, like all those other activities. I know we know the answer, and obviously with our students, it's just, you know, obviously we don't have any A and F members here today. Later on, they're just going to see the bottom line, and hopefully we can encourage them, look at the video, hear why we're adding these positions, just not, oh, we're adding another position at the high school or K-8 level. There is a reason for it, and it's obviously to support students to get the services that they need, and also to handle the administration. So, you know, obviously our teachers are also having the leadership in the classroom to improve, obviously, learning and things like that. So that's the reason why I'm asking that question. It's not that I support it 100%. I just want to know, I just want to make sure the public knows who didn't attend the budget hearings that that's the reason why we're there.
As Dr. Brusford said, school and district administrators are always balancing the managerial part of the job with the instructional leadership part. And as she said, it's shifted, being more managerial than instructional leaders, and we need to bring that pendulum back to a better balance between the two.
If I could just add, I want to just point out for folks who aren't on the budget subcommittee, or I wanted to point out a couple of things. When the health teacher is not being cut, it continues to be funded through ESSER funds for an additional year. So in the original, we didn't realize that originally. So that zero does not mean that there's a reduction in health. It just means that that's grant funded. It's just not being added to the budget, to the operating budget this year. And then the other one is the school adjustment counselor as well, was also actually approved in the FY23 budget. And so that's a position that is carried over to FY24 and can be filled without adding to the operating budget. So those 2 positions, well, one continues to exist and one will be added, but without an effect on the operating budget. And then I just wanted to say in support of what Mr. Schoonover and Dr. Brusford said, and I'm often the fiscally conservative voice, but I would say that the guidance counselors now carry a caseload of about 330 students or so, and the national recommendations are more like 250 to 1. So this would bring those ratios down to what the ASCA recommends and MASCA recommends. And I think the other piece that's important to note is that if you are paying attention to what's going on in other towns with their budgets, as their ESSER funds are evaporating, they piled on a lot of staff with ESSER funds, and we didn't. Because I think our conservative approach to say we're not going to add a whole bunch of positions that we know we may not be able to sustain long term I think was wise. But I think that there's definitely legal changes and just increased needs of kids everywhere across the Commonwealth, across the nation. Those positions are needed. I think there's the ratios, the workload, the time spent, paperwork that's mandated is pretty onerous. And so I think if we can add positions into the budget in a way that's sustainable long term and meets our students' needs and helps our staff better serve them. So it's not just moving from crisis to crisis. I think that that's the smart way to approach this, but I think those needs are very real, and I think the investment in our special ed positions is the right thing to do educationally and also fiscally makes all sorts of sense. So, but I just wanted to add, I didn't want people thinking we were cutting it out for cutting an adjustment counselor. That's correct. We added an adjustment counselor as well.
May I just add a few more comments? So when Mrs. Gagliardi, Dr. Brelsford and I meet with the Student Advisory Council at the beginning of each month, those students, and this is where Ms. O'Brien, she represents that group to the committee, the kids have requested the additional counseling. They have talked about needing more support in their college and career readiness process. So they have really strongly advocated for that. And I can't remember if it was Ms. O'Brien or Ms. Schoonover who at an earlier meeting talked about that and brought that up as a concern. But I did want to address the other several of the bottom ones there. So the special education teacher inclusion that's there, now that is, right now, we're putting a hold on that. Decreasing the closing the special education gap is really our highest priority. But we are waiting for a report from New Solutions. And until that report comes in, I think it's premature to advocate for additional staff that might be in opposition to some of the recommendations. So we're just trying to hold off on that right now without being too premature and putting in a position and then saying, our model of inclusion needs to be adjusted, which I think might be a recommendation, but we'll just have to wait and see. So that's why that one is there. And TV media, this was a request from the high school administration to add another media person. TV media production is a very popular program of studies here. But I think it was at our last meeting when you approved some graduation requirements. And with that, there's no longer going to be that tech requirement for every single student. So you may have some students who are not going to take TV production and might not be taking robotics or computer science or graphics engineering because right now they have to, and so moving in the future they might not. So we just need to see, we're going to wait one more year, at least that's my recommendation, to wait one more year, just to see how those requests play out and then take it from there. If it remains to be a very, very highly requested set of courses, then we can look at expanding that next year. And the in-school suspension, right now, this is a 0.6 position. There was a request for an additional 0.4 to make it full-time, and that was scaled back. But in-school suspension continues to be the way the structure is right now with 3 days per week. It is 3 days per week, correct? It's not consistent in terms of sometimes the immediacy of assigning an in-school suspension. There's a delay between an action and a consequence. And we were also holding off a little bit to get more information from the state about where in-school suspension falls in the new discipline law. And I got word just earlier this week from DESE saying that in-school suspensions are not impacted at all by the alternative strategies, alternative remedies for suspension. So in-school suspension is very much still a favored model by DESE in terms of discipline. So with that, I know there was a question about that one, and that's why it was brought down to 0. I would still advocate for that one to be full-time, but right now the recommendation from the budget subcommittee is not.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, so the top two, the health teacher and the school adjustment council, are obviously that is not something, that's just placeholders for following years.
They're actually they're there.
They're there.
Those positions will be funded. It's just not going to be affecting it, the FY '24 budget any further than what it already has.
All right, so the other two, the bottom three, those are just placeholders until you get either reports or,
Well, we wanted, Mr. Tara and I wanted you to see, and this has come from requests in previous years, what has the administration asked for? Just so you can see what was requested and what is moving forward.
just on behalf of myself, you know, as I asked last year for a couple of items, one, students came back and actually, I wasn't at that meeting, but they asked for the bathroom monitors, and the school committee voted to place them. The other item that the in-school suspension, I still think I'm a big supporter of that because of what Dr. Bresswood said last year, and it seems like it's still, when the action needs to be taken immediately. All right, you're going to go to school today, but tomorrow, on Wednesday, you're going to be in school suspension. So that is something that I still support. So later on, when we see the bottom number, that would be something that I would like to see in there. But again, I know the budget committee has seen the whole budget as a whole, and I don't want to, I'm just, as we go along, I intentionally waited until tonight to actually see and ask the questions. So.
Any other questions?
The only other thing I'll note on that, on the two paras and the special education teacher, those were included predominantly because we have the population coming on to go out of district.
Thank you.
This is just a reconciliation of FTEs. As part of the process we go through, we look at all the staffing people we have within our buildings in all categories, and we make sure that we've accounted for all the positions within the budget to make sure we didn't miss anything, we've accounted for it. So it's just an exercise we go through, and it's a good data point for us as we track to see changes happening within the budget. And you'll see that on the final detailed budget pages in the next coming weeks. It has the details of all the FTE by categories, and you can see that within the operating budget. It almost looks like the FinStat report.
So for folks who just can't see, so this proposal is, adds 5 FTEs to the 24 budget.
Is it really adding 5, or are we adding 3.7 from last year? So I see, as of last year, in the beginning, we had, I'm just trying to, we added the 1.3.
The 1.3 happened during the year.
During this, okay, all right, so that, I thought of it, for a minute, I thought you subtracted it, so we
No.
added. Okay.
And it's not necessarily an add this year, is what I'm using my financial software system to build budgets and actually capture the FTEs in one of the positions. I didn't have the 1 in there. So for the only way for this to work is I had to add the 1 in this sheet. So when you do a comparison, you'll see this year, if approved as presented, you'll see 149.95 FTEs. I just wanted to reconcile the adjustment. So when you get the financial report, the full budget, this is just a reconciliation of it. It's truly 5 FTEs added this year. No, I can't. You challenged me.
Were you trying to slide it?
I was trying to compress it and then slide it back out. This is the regular transportation side. Basically, it's the last year of a 5-year contract in total. And then I know that typically you have a joint school committee that really will approve these, so I think that will be coming up before the end of the year. But this is the assumption that at this point in time, you're going to be approving a contract. But 2.5 4% increase based on the buses that we have. This is go to the next slide. This is the homeless transportation budget. This is down by about 50,000, if I'm not correctly, with this particular line item. This is based on actual what we're experiencing right now. So I think this should be a pretty good number. Obviously, this can change. And we won't know until we get here. So I'll go this. There's a lot of information here. And you know how I think everybody basically, Mr. Rosario, a lot of credit on the work he does transporting our students. There's two components to this particular slide, and I'm going to kind of slide down here to show you. This right here, this section right here, 531,000, is for contracted services for transportation we can't provide. It could either be by Fisher Bus, it could be by Tremblay, it could be by Van, it could be by one of those vendors that does transportation for us. It's actually down by 70,000 compared to where we're in this fiscal year. Actually down by 70,000 based on the approved budget for this fiscal year. And that's based on changes in students and who needs transportation and what we're able to provide versus what we have to contract out. The other piece to the special ed transportation piece is really the cost of our own vans, the operational cost of our own vans. And that's both the salaries and the operational cost. The salary for our drivers is up by about $1,600 over the current fiscal year. It's $132,000. It's shared 50-50 with both the K-8 and the region. And the same thing for the operational cost of the vans. As I mentioned, I think I may have said see the budget supplement. We did purchase a new vehicle. You'll see it's a black van. It's been leaded and all 7D certified. So now it's on the road. Mr. Rosario was just driving again the feeling for it, finding out what the options are and learning the vehicle. And so far, it's a pretty decent decision to buy that. We have tried on multiple occasions to try to purchase vehicles with state contracts, contacted vendors. Every time we go do that, we're getting shut down. We found this vehicle, we pulled the trigger, we had to buy it because we have one vehicle that potentially may have to be taken out of service soon. So the operational cost is fuel, oil changes, tires, batteries, all the things you would normally do in your own vehicles. So that cost is about $35,000 shit per district, or a total of $70,000, almost $71,000 a change. Question? It can give you just a little bit of perspective. We had to rent one van or contract out a van, $50,000, $60,000 could be a year just to do transportation service. So these vehicles, that one particular vehicle will pay for itself in the first year. This right here is a breakdown of special education services by category. So one of the things I do want to point out is, this line right here is what's going to be funded through circuit breaker funds. Circuit breaker funds are money that the school districts received based on excess high special education costs. And we're going to be receiving about $1 million this year. I think I presented that to the school committee on a couple of occasions that we're going to have extra money this year coming in from circuit breaker that'll be used to cover special ed out of district tuition costs. So right now we're projecting that we're going to use $100 million for FY24. That'll decline as the student population that's placed out of district moves out of district or ages out. That number will be adjusted, and it is adjusted on an annual basis. But for the most part, you'll see the categories here. They're pretty consistent. I think that there was one. Most of them are pretty consistent. Out of district special education, for the most part, is pretty level this year. I think 2 years ago, we saw a spike in it because of the number of students shifted over from the K-8 side to the region side. And also, as we look at the special education, part of the assessment sheet formula takes into consideration the member communities, which students are coming in and are responsible by each member community. So that's a factor of that. I know that Berkley, I think, is going to be seeing a couple of increases in certain areas with that, and that'll be a factor into the assessment formula. I know 2 years ago, Somerset took a bulk of that under the new regional agreement, and the way the formula was agreed. I don't know if there's any questions. Other than that, circuit breaker, IDEA, and then operating, you can see the majority of what covers the out-of-district cost. So really, the total out-of-district cost with all those funds is $2.4 million, almost $2.4 million. Question? This is just really kind of a snapshot of what we're doing for out-of-district tuition. Where they're at, what programs are they at, whether they're in-state private, out-of-state private, collaboratives. As you can see, the majority of the collaboratives, there were a few residentials, and those residentials are students that are, obviously stayed in on a regular basis. And they'll transport back and forth every day.
And Mr. Taro, with the exception of the collaboratives, those, I think, next 4 categories, from the state down to the residential, those are the ones that are going 14%, right?
Yes, so these typically will be about 14%. Collaboratives, I think they have a range, depending on which one they are, anywhere from 4 to 10%, depending on what services they provide. I'm glad you pointed out. That this actually takes into consideration those adjustments on what we know to be the rates for next year, the percentage increases.
Every year, the state determines what the private facilities can charge for increases. And this year, they established that their rate was 14%. So that's what we're anticipating that it will all follow. The collaboratives, though, as Mr. Tower said, tend to be less than that, and somewhere in the 4 to 10% range, depending on the program, the collaborative or the program within the collaborative. But a lot of districts right now, you've probably been reading these in the Mars updates, just about that 14% gain, and a lot of districts are asking for some additional support. We'll see what Governor Healy and the Mass House have to say about that.
This is a summary of the maintenance budget. This takes into consideration what we anticipate the bids are going to be, or actually the bids we receive for snow removal. I would, if I was a gambling man, I probably would have gambled that we weren't going to have any snow this time so far this year, so we would take the chance. That does take that into consideration. Nowhere around this, it's a slight increase. The majority of the increase really is related to the contract for snow removal. This also takes into consideration that you'll see that the student fees for parking have been waived, and we're not charging student fees anymore for this. So that has a little bit of an impact on the bottom line for the operation of for the maintenance department. We did talk a little bit about, within the capital planning and budget subcommittee, was drainage. I think we maybe spoke at the school committee too about that as far as the athletic fields. Mr. Francis, myself, and Mr. Alves met with a turf specialist company last week. What's the best solutions for this? Really, they're right now recommending probably adding some soil and stuff, soils that really can create some drainage before digging up the fields. We want to do is kind of a low cost of preparing some estimates for us, and then that way we're not tearing out the fields and looking at grow time and how many seasons we need to get the fields in place. Not only that, Mr. Francis has already scheduled most of the games right now. It will be really complicated just trying to get anything done this summer. So one of our plans is when we hit the ground running, it's going to be giving me some quotes on what the action steps we can do right now, make some improvements to those fields, maybe get a better pitch, because when I went there, I could actually see some of the ground is really not level, it's not pitched away. If we get a good pitch, they think that it could resolve a good portion of the problem. And then we're gonna look at the infield and how we can do that. They call it hard rock, it's really hard. It's gonna be turned over a little bit and put some different clay there to get the infields in better condition. So we're working on that. So I just want to let you know, we're talking about drainage and what does it mean for the fields. That's probably the most conservative approach, to see what that can do, what the results would be on it. And if that works well, we can jump on the softball fields and get those softball fields, our fields done as well. And then the second step, if it doesn't work, then it's the complete, they actually grade, it's almost like grade mill, when they grade the roads, they go down the roads, take it down, and then they take all the turf off. Then they put a whole bed and level it all off. That would be worst case scenario if we wanted to do that. Question? Technology. I just worked on that. 2 fingers. Down by about 30,000. We've made a lot of investments over the past couple of years through school committee approval. We've purchased the access points. We've upgraded technology within classrooms, computer labs, music labs. You know, we're in pretty decent shape. Mr. Levesque and his team are looking at some other technology pieces and putting a long-term plan in place as far as strategically, okay, we got access points. Mr. Lloyd, life of 6-8 years. He's been putting a master plan in place. He's working on that. One of the things he's identified will be, what's the school will help me out? I know Switches, thank you. So those are switches that actually control the traffic within the technology infrastructure. So those things are coming to the end of their useful life. So those are things we have to plan on. And right now, he's experiencing a very long lead time items. So even if we wanted to purchase some, lead time could be 6 months, 8 months. So, but those are some of the things that's not included in here. We try to do that as one-time expenditures. We come to the school committee and say, look, we're going to do a budget transfer, we're going to get this done sooner than later. Let's see if there's anything else here. Nothing really major. It's down by 30,000. We're just keeping an eye on what things we can replace, when they need to be done, and do them as soon as we possibly can. Chromebooks have already been ordered for next year, and if I understand correctly, I think they may have already been delivered. So they've already delivered, there'll be inventory, we're prepping for those, and so that we're in good shape for the beginning of the new school year.
One question, what is the insurance expense for?
The student Chromebook insurance is
No, for the systems.
Like the cyber.
oh, cyber insurance.
Yeah.
That would be under the like employee benefits and other insurances category. I'm actually waiting for information relative to our insurance. I did, based on preliminary discussions with our broker, I did increase his budget based on what he anticipated would be for both property liability, workers' comp, and cyber insurance.
So that's already built.
It's already built into this good budget. And we did a significant, Mr. Levesque did a significant amount of work with meeting the criteria of our cyber insurance. We had to go through a pretty robust process. He's going through that, and we've implemented some things based on that process. So I think it was a worthwhile step that we went through. There may be additional things we may need to do. It really depends if it's the same insurance company. If you get a different insurance company providing cyber insurance, they may want us to do some additional steps. This next screen is like, don't even try to read it. But these are basically the detailed line items that make up the summary of that. So, you know, every number that you see there's a story behind every number that you see in the operating budget. We try to be as transparent as possible, so we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. That's the next two or three slides. It talks about all the software that we use within this. There's a heavy use of instructional software. There's things that we're doing, you know, there's a line right here for Zoom and what we're doing for meetings. And you talk about efficiency, some of the things that came out of COVID, you know, the Zoom meetings, and what we can do even internally. You can't be in 3 different places at once, so it's been an unbelievable experience. I think this is the last slide. This is the debt service payments, the principal interest payments we pay on this building. This tells you what our debt service payments are going to be. It's 2.1 million, 2,160,000 for principal interest payments over the course of the year. It tells you bond call provisions and what the last payment is on these. The last payment on 2 of these is FY35. The call provisions and the things that's important because it really depends what the interest rates are. With the rise in interest rate market, we were hoping if interest rates stayed low, when these call provisions came in on these dates, we could possibly look at refinancing, some type of a refi on that, and reduce the interest rates and actually reduce some of the monthly payments. Unfortunately, we've done so well, and when these were done, these go, you know, under 3, except for this one right here, it's 3.65. 3.67, and we should get comparative bond ratings again on a regular basis. I have not looked at the most recent one that we received, so I'm not sure where they're at right now. They may be close to that for municipal bonds. I'd have to look at that, and that would be something that Lindsay Albanese would be responsible for doing. So, one of the things I didn't mention to the full school committee with the budget subcommittee is also the commitment to the OPEB fund. We did increase that another $10,000 in that. It's not part of this presentation, but you'll see that's part of the detailed presentation. So we've increased that now. I think it's up to $30,000 contribution to the OPEB fund. And I think the OPEB report was actually presented to the school committee 2 meetings ago or 3 meetings ago. So kudos to the school committee for having the foresight to figure out how do we get that unfunded liability down. I use OPEB as the other post-employee benefits, which is health insurance for retirees for our board businesses. And that is it.
Questions? I just have one. Does this include the addition of lacrosse?
I think that was the request
That
of
was-
the budget
I know
subcommittee,
it is.
so that is in here.
Okay, so that
Yes.
is in there, so just, so that includes the addition of boys and girls lacrosse for
Co-ed, it's like a MIA, or actually having our own team, or are we going to be sending our kids to another?
No, it would be establishing our own team. There's enough interest
Perfect.
to establish our own. The first year, as schools build these programs, usually they'll play maybe at a JV level or something, but we have to work all of that out. It does include a boys and a girls team.
Have you, off topic, for tomorrow's conversation, have you looked at interest in the middle school?
I'm not familiar with middle school programs. I don't think the Massasoit League has lacrosse. I will ask that question, but I'm not familiar with any middle schools.
You're seeing younger and younger kids playing it,
Yeah.
so it's
Good question.
Right, just so you, we're in a discussion we had in budget subcommittee that athletics request was for boys volleyball and for lacrosse, boys and girls. The subcommittee recommendation was to hold off on the boys volleyball for now, but to put forward the lacrosse, boys and girls. We're one of the few schools that doesn't offer it at this point. So. Anyone have any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Carroll, for all that business. Thank you for that presentation.
But budget subcommittee did a lot of work with this as well. We had a lot of meetings and there's a lot of discussions. I appreciate their time as well.
I'm just gonna check looking for dates, just so we can make sure people are aware. So,
Yeah. And we'll-
there's a little more work to do on this budget, but, the budget presentation, the final budget, the public presentation, public meeting, is scheduled for, let me make sure I say this right, Tuesday, March 21st at 6:30. There's maybe some adjustments between now and then, through the subcommittee, and then another discussion in a committee of the whole. So you can save the date for March 21st, that's
March
I'm sorry, I might have misspoke.
No,
March
you
21st.
said March 21st, I'm saying February 21st, I'm like, that's next week.
No, that's
That's
good.
vacation week.
Not that good. March 21st will be the public hearing.
Oh, we already have a schedule.
Yes. Make sure we get invitations out to everyone in both towns. I don't think, there's nothing to vote on with that tonight, but thank you for that, and we'll keep working on it, and we'll bring it, budget back again.
Good work.
Okay, the next item on the agenda. Get lots of time. Next item on the agenda is the update on the baseball and softball drainage issues, which Mr. Tower sort of just referred to. I don't know if there's anything that you needed to add, or.
No, I realized it was here, but we were in the maintenance piece, so I think it was a good spot to discuss it. So I'll keep you posted once I get some quotes. I'll make sure that if I have to go out to bid, then I'll have to follow and get that going sooner than later. As a reminder for those that are not related to this, I'm working on the food service bid contract as well, so that's a little bit of a lift right now.
Can I just ask, just to clarify for myself to make sure I understood what you were referring to?
Sure.
Does it sound like the current approach may be to do those, except deal with the soil and those types of things? Would that allow for an uninterrupted spring, baseball, softball season? Can that be sort of done around that, or are we still looking at sort of using alternate locations and fields, or?
I want to see what their action plans are. The hope is because of the middle school construction project, the lack of fields, the schedule's already done. What I don't want to do is impact the sports this year. So I want to see what they can do to make those fields better, still be able to play on them. I just don't know what the growth season is and how quickly. I think they start as early as
Mid March.
So they may be already on the fields. It may be their recommendation, let's get the games done, and then they hit those fields right after the season's over.
Early June.
Oh, is it?
Well, for our own season, early
Okay.
June.
But we would probably take over those fields like in June, because we have irrigation there, they can do the work. And that's what they basically said, we can do the work because you have water. If you didn't have water, then they probably would recommend doing it during like the spring season, the fall season. So you work on crabgrass and other controls that you have to put in place. So short answer is, not gonna impact the program this year, but we'll be looking, possibly doing some work in the infields to get the infield squared away. I'm waiting for a response. I said, I don't wanna do the infield if it's gonna impact them putting the soil on the outfield. I want to know what the action steps are and get back to you.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the contract with the Edward Davis Company. This is regarding our security risk.
You have some information, the scope of their work. We've awarded the contract. This was something that we gave us quotes for both Somerset and Somerset Berkley. The cost for Somerset Berkley is going to be $17,100. The work will involve really four main types of work. First, it'll be a comprehensive physical site review, followed by a written report, providing some recommendations. They will also review policies that we have, our own internal policies within the school, but also policies that we have with our first responders, and make any recommendations based on that. There's also going to be some multi-hazard training following that, so like tabletop exercises and walking us through different scenarios, which we've talked about adding that to the drills that we do already. We haven't done it yet, so that would be a really great addition. And then there's this integrity assessment that's also part of it, where they will come back randomly, and not just here, but for the four Somerset schools too, and conduct some assessments just to see if if we've implemented what we should have, and just to see how if there is any integrity in our protocols or lack of integrity.
What is the total amount of the scope of work for both districts?
It was 17,100 for Somerset Berkley, 20,400 for Somerset.
Didn't Somerset vote for up to $50,000 to do?
For the Somerset Public Schools, yes.
I thought while we were discussing that we would also have them do the high school part of that
I
discussion.
don't think that was part of the language, only because of the regional district.
'Cause that was my intent. That's why I just thought that we would pay for the high school as well, because it's part of the KE, how we all work together. It's the same
Yeah.
police department and all of that. That's why I'm. We'll have to. Okay. We'll follow up and see. Because that was my intent, that the KE was paying for it. That was KE, it stemmed from the KE. So. Like, we never asked the region, would you like to be involved? It almost seems like we're forcing it on us,
Right, but this is something that, in speaking with Chief Costa, our SRO, our leadership, we all thought that it's important to do it for this school as well. And we know that when this was constructed 9 years ago, there was a lens of school safety and security that was part of this that obviously the other four did not have. But still, it's still important to review it, to get some recommendations, and to make sure that it's the safest facility we can. So
yeah, I definitely think it's worth doing, but again, my intent was the K was going to pick up the whole tab. I didn't know, because I probably would have asked the region to have been involved in, preparing the warrants and all of this. So, okay.
Should we have a turnaround time to just, because I'm sure people.
good question. It was deliverables, at least for the first part, 60 days, 60 or 90 days, right?
I think we were approaching like mid-April.
Yeah.
We were trying to get the first portion of it done. The policies and the other reviews were going to need a little bit longer. The fiscal piece of the assessment of the site was going to be done first. So if there was any action steps that we needed to take, we could actually take some right now if there was money available in the operating budget. So it was, I would call low-hanging fruit that they say, hey, this is, I do want to qualify the Officer Roberts here and the SROs and elementary schools are really good at telling us what they need, and we try to address those as soon as possible.
And those site visits are going to begin within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
The only thing I'd like to add, if it is amenable to the committee, is that the proposal calls for meetings between the Ed Davis Company and Somerset leadership and regional leadership. I'd like to suggest, if he's willing, that Mr. Fenstermaker, as the chair of the Security Maintenance and Capital Improvement Subcommittee and as a member of the Budget Subcommittee, be the school committee's liaison to that leadership team, anticipating that there may be some recommendations that come from this, and that I think it would be helpful to have a school committee person who can sort of bring that back to us. So, if Mr. Fenstermaker would be willing to serve in that capacity.
Well,
that
is the administration meeting I'd be happy
I support that.
I don't think, do we need to put it on there?
You're the chair, you appointed him.
There you go, you're appointed. Thank you for your service.
Is it gonna be the same face there at Berkley?
Yes, it is Fat Nothing Burger.
But we very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the update on correspondence with the Swansea School Committee regarding the Thanksgiving football game. In the folder, you'll have the copy of the email based on the vote at our last meeting. It was asked to communicate our concern to our counterparts in the Swansea School Committee. I did that in consultation with administration, and then you also see the response that we got back. And I don't think there's anything else to do except receive and place on file.
If I may, I only have a couple of comments. One, thanks for sending out the letter on our behalf. The other piece, obviously, I read both letters. One, I think I would love, and I'm sure Mr. Francis is spending all his energy is to find a new partner for us for at least this coming year. If he's able to give us an update every once in a while just to see how it's going along, that'd be great. And second, and obviously it's always easier to play Monday night quarterback or Monday morning quarterback. What I would recommend, whenever there are any type of rumors of any type moving forward from any sports, any districts, instead of picking up the phone and texting and emailing, just get all the powers to be in one room and really hash it out. Sometimes, face-to-face works a lot better than phone calls and that. But again, I would like, our energy now is more to find a new suitable partner for Thanksgiving. And I think that's everybody's wishes, really, including parents.
Next on the agenda, topics not anticipated by the chair for meeting hours of advance of the meeting. Action items for future meeting.
Budget.
Budget. Okay. Next on the consent agenda, we have approval of minutes of prior meetings for the open session of January 24th, 2023, and the joint executive session of December 20th, 2022. Please note that those have been ended.
So moved.
So the motion to accept the consent agenda made by Mr. Machado, seconded by Ms. Pereira. All those in favor? Aye. So voted. Next on the agenda, we have public input. Is there any public input this evening? Sure, you can have a seat. Please state your name and address or affiliation.
Sure. My name is James Faria. I'm a resident at 5 Martha Avenue in Somerset. My name is James Faria. Do you hear says is it 3 minutes or?
It's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who?
Okay. I want to make sure I didn't cut anybody either.
You're fine.
Great. My name is James Faria. I reside at 5 Moffett Avenue. I'm here tonight to encourage the school committee to eliminate the user fees entirely when putting together the next fiscal budget. Especially tonight, after hearing and understanding that user fees are roughly $130,000 as part of the preliminary budget, with an net operating budget of roughly $19.5 million. The $130,000 is less than a 1% increase if it was to be incorporated into the operating budget. I believe that that's a small price to pay for ensuring all students have the opportunity to at least try out for sports, regardless of their income level, and music as well as other activities. Second, I understand that the regional school committee at a prior meeting will be returning a surplus to the town at this year's town meeting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that figure to be roughly $600,000. And that this isn't the first year that the regional school committee has returned a budget surplus to the town. So on the one hand, we've been charging user fees to students while returning budget surpluses to the town. Most importantly, I just believe that every student should have the opportunity to at least try out for sports, music, and participate in other activities, regardless of cost. Regardless of their income, their household income. This is something that compelled me to attend the budget subcommittee meeting and to also attend tonight. I believe that those students who cannot afford the user fees, I understand that there is a process where they can come forward, complete a form, and request that the user fees be waived. And I also understand that no student has ever been denied, and that's great. However, when the budget subcommittee reconvenes, I ask that the subcommittee and the school committee, when it ultimately votes on putting forth the budget, to ask themselves this question: how many students have not come forward? How many students that cannot afford the user fees did not complete the form, and therefore did not participate? Maybe they were too proud, or for whatever reason, just said, forget it. Those are the students that we should be advocating for. That figure is not quantifiable. Those kids, those students who are not having the complete high school experience, if you will. You could have a very capable football player who's not participating, for all we know, because they're just too proud. They don't want to come forward. They don't want to fill out a form. Even though they may know in their minds that this will probably get approved, but for whatever reason, maybe they're not coming forward. So therefore, I encourage this school committee to advocate for those students who cannot afford the user fees by putting forth a budget that eliminates user fees entirely for this next budget, to ensure that all students have at least a chance to try out for sports, music, and all activities that the school provides. And that should be without the need for completing a form. And in fact, the only way to ensure that all students have the opportunity to at least try out, regardless of their household income level, is to eliminate the user fees entirely. And I ask that this not be done incrementally over a couple of years. I think time is of the essence, and we owe it to all the students to do immediately with this next budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar.
One thing. Mr. Farrar, thank you. I do agree with you, and I'm sure most people on this board also agrees, and we're going to be doing our best, as you heard, the budget subcommittee. Just for the public record, this year was the first time we actually, I believe we refunded money back to the town. This was the first year. $221,000 was that from?
Both communities received a total of 700. I think it's 760 or 750,000, round number. And then each member community received their portion. Berkley 217, and Somerset.
Okay, so combined.
Yeah,
and
combined.
in prior years, is it the surplus money went to the E&D fund or something?
It would sit in the E&D capped at 5% of the previous year outcome.
I didn't want the town to think that they had money coming to them every single year.
And we didn't give it to them.
Yeah, that's the only thing. But we did have a surplus, and we have been throwing in the E&D. And this year is the first time we actually refunded money to the town because we are above the 5%.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Ferry, because you took the time to sit through our budget meeting and brought those points up at that time as well. I appreciate your persistence and your input in this problem.
There is nothing else for the committee right now. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Machado, and seconded by Mr. Taylor. All those in favor? Aye. No one's opposed. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.